You are now listening to N21FM, a Pokemon podcast. I'm Glenn. I'm joined as always by my wonderful co-host, Johnny Sushi. And we are joined in the studio today by none other than the local king of rogue decks, full-fledged rogue enthusiast, Princess Veil Diancie enjoyer, Bryan H. Welcome to the show, Bryan. How are you?
Howdy. I'm doing really well. It is an honor to be here amongst so many prestigious guests. And before, I know you have been a good springboard for my ideas, so I'm happy to talk shop finally.
Yeah, I love talking with you about rogue decks. And hey, yeah, you're right. This is actually a weirdly prestigious group. You are now officially like 2 degrees of separation away from Wanter Saldana. So
yeah,
how does it feel?
Amazing.
That's great. Well, Bryan, we've got quite a few things to cover. So first off, I want you to just tell me a little bit about yourself, just who you are as a person and as a Pokemon player, and the things you enjoy.
Yeah, I have been playing Pokemon for a long time. I cut my teeth on the OG. I got Pokemon Red on launch day. My best friend lived right down the street from me. He got blue, I got red. He got silver, I got gold. We just went tit for tat.
Nice.
Our rivals were named each other. Like, our Pokemon journey goes way back.
That's so cool.
Our moms were actually high school friends, it turns out, and they just happened to live down the road from us. So, cool. You know, it was basically like a playtest person. We didn't know the rules all the way. We were young kids.
Yeah.
Played up until Diamond and Pearl, and then kind of fell off around the e-reader format too, for the TCG, and you know, just kind of didn't really play Pokemon much. But over the past 3 years now. Actually, no, it was right at the beginning of the Scarlet and Violet format. I just picked it up and I dropped Yu-Gi-Oh! That I was playing at the time because turns out spending 4 digits on a deck is not great and sustainable for a game.
No,
so I sold all that and I'm like, whoa, cool. I can get like a tier 0 deck for $50. This is amazing. And then I look at the card pool and I'm like, what is going on? Very diverse time. Obsidian Flames had just come out.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like a really healthy time for the format. And like, that's kind of it. So yeah, I've been lifelong Pokemon enjoyer, and it's been a fun ride. I'm glad it's still kicking and popular as much as it is today. Like seeing all the juniors and senior or junior. Seeing all the younger kids playing in the area gives me hope for the future too. So that's always really cool.
This is true. Yeah, no, it's crazy. Yeah. Even at Get Some, there's like a really substantial juniors and seniors league. It's cool in our area, especially. I forget frequently how big Charlotte is for Pokemon, and so it's cool to see not only people in Masters who are like, for instance, right now, like some people from our area are killing it right now in Puerto Rico is happening this weekend. And then we've still got a bunch of younger folks. I'm pretty sure the senior Joseph in our group, not our group, but like our area, he just was a finalist in Merida.
He got first.
Oh, he got first? This was news to me. But yeah, it's super cool like seeing the young blood in the Pokemon TCG, and it's cool to have an old head around as well. So with that said, do you have other hobbies along with Pokemon, or has it kind of just been like tunnel vision, playing the TCG, playing video games too, for the long time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I gotta pull the book out. I tend to jump hobbies pretty frequently. You know, I am a game developer for my day job, so like there's no shortage of stuff like that. Yeah.
This is news to me. Yeah, this is absolutely in the About You section.
Yeah, I work in the AAA industry, and
that's so sick.
That's fun, and like, so I play a large swath of games, like a big RPG head. Playing through Grandia, Phantasy Star Online, the OG PSO. So I've got that. MMO gaming, play fighting games. I've been playing Street Fighter, Guilty Gear Strive. God, the easier question is, what don't I do at this point?
Yeah, I got you. That's so cool. Yeah, this is that's such wild, brand new news to me. Oh man. Yeah, we'll have to unpack all that on another day. We might have you on for like an extra episode we do just to talk about like games and game dev and what your journey through that has been like.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool, man. Like just having I don't know, wealth of knowledge, man. It's like having all that experience to just kind of base everything off.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting because it mimics that of a Pokemon journey, like in the games a lot, because my childhood goal was to be a game developer, and then I went to work at Time Warner Cable for 10 years of my life, and then just stuff kind of happened, and maybe that's not a real good equivalent, but whatever.
Maybe. You had your gym battles, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is there I know this is a little off of what we storyboarded, but is there a game that got you into game dev?
Originally, I wanted to work on World of Warcraft.
Okay.
That was like my North Star, like that is the pinnacle for me. That's my Mount Silver is working on WoW. But like, I don't want to move to California as an adult. That kind of stinks. It's really expensive there. So I'm just kind of taking what I can do, like, but yeah, that would be what I would say if I had to pick one.
Nice.
That's so cool. I think with that we're gonna just launch right into kind of our main topic here. But as Glenn mentioned, you are an avid rogue deck enjoyer, and so I guess to just kind of start with that, like, what was the like journey into rogue decks for you? What kind of started all? Because I feel like a lot of people, they get into Pokemon, right? Like, just, I got in kind of around the same time you did, like around that Obsidian Flames era, with early Scarlet Violet. And when I started out with like Live and everything, I picked up like the Arcanine deck, obviously, because that's like what everyone's just pushed into, and it's like, wow, this kind of stinks after a while. And then I was trying out the Charizard stuff because it's like, okay, well, you're pushed towards Charizard at the time, and that was kind of cool. And then I went towards like Luna Rocks, which is definitely not like the same kind of deck. So yeah, like I guess because of that, what was your journey there? How did that work out?
Well, okay, so my starter deck, I guess, was Chien-Pao. I picked up the Chien-Pao deck, and then I'm like, oh wow, I can just buy 3 of these and have like a deck. Like, it's, my roommate at the time played a little more competitively and picked Zard up pretty quickly, played Miraidon, mostly like the top echelon of the meta pretty consistently, and playing Chien-Pao against that current meta, I was like, this is cool and all, but like, there's a huge swath of cards that are available to you in this current rotation. Like, there's just a huge library that I felt and still feel to this day is just untapped, right? So I guess to kind of kick it off, right? Like, my rogue journey started with a conversation with friend of the show, Shane. And it was at my very first cup that I ever went to. I took Wishcash Mill there. And I got my high score mill of 18 during that cup, and the person scooped instantly. It was amazing.
So sick.
That's so sick.
So I had a conversation during the lunch break of that cup with Shane, and I'm like, why do you play the Pokemon trading card game? Shane is a guy that likes to win. There's nothing wrong with that. I respect it a lot. And that's like his modus operandi. That's why he plays. That's why a lot of people play the trading card game. And his answer kind of got me thinking. I'm like, there's a lot of valid motivations for why we play this game and why we spend our money and our time in it. And my fun comes from making my opponent uncomfortable. All right. So like, running neutralization zone cloth. Yeah. Right? People see cloth nowadays and they're like, oh, this is just Terapagos cloth, whatever. And then they line like it's a Terapagos cloth match. And then I put neutralization zone on the board or turn 1 doink them. And it's just like, what? Or like a Miraidon player. Miraidon crumples to neutralization zone because the current lists that are in rotation don't run a lot of stadium hate. So like, I can just play the game and it's really cool that I have as an option, right? So I find it fun when I find configurations of decks with cards that people are kind of sleeping on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's not to say that I don't think that meta is fun and playing meta is fun. As someone who is playing Cloth, and that moment that I saw it on stage, that person, that one guy who played Cloth on stage, I lost my I was in the Charlotte Pokemon Discord. I was losing my marbles.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, my sauce, it's gone. So
I remember when Cloth first started getting popular, that I was like, oh no, Bryan can't play the deck anymore because it's too commonplace.
I remember building that list. I was trying to put a call out to see who had the Cloth, and Zach was like, hey, I gotta place that. Exactly. I see where you're cooking. That was a lot of fun. They hooked it up with that a lot.
They tend to,
yeah.
So
what were you saying? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. So like, effectively, my affinity for Rogue is because, one, there's a lot of cards in the game that let me play the game, right? Like everyone in meta, in my opinion, this is not like Sage Wisdom or anything. In my opinion, when people are playing meta against meta, there's a flowchart that everybody has built in their brains. They know their combo lines. They know what they need to do to keep the board state in a place that's advantageous to them. When they go up against a Rogue deck, it just throws a huge wrench in it. Yeah. And I think that's cool because I can see my opponent light up when I flip Palafin EX, right?
Yes.
Okay? That is like, when I see that and they're like, what is he, those magic words I live for, what is he playing? Is what makes me enjoy the game, and that's why I play that.
I've said those words to you, in fact, frequently.
Yeah.
Oh man. I still remember when you were making what was it? It was Zatu Espathra work. Back when I first moved to the Get Some scene.
I played Bombardier. That was Bombardier.
Yes, that was with Bombardier in it too. And I remember I was like, this guy is something else, dude.
Well, that deck got hit very badly with 2 rotations back to back. I can't play it now because I lost Fog Crystal in 1 rotation, and now Energy Lotto's gone.
Yeah.
Super sad.
Yeah.
It's a big bummer.
Yeah.
But we carry on. There will be plenty of Rogue decks, I'm sure. What do you I think you briefly touched on it. What are you playing now though? What's your current favorite Rogue deck to play? Or what you are just playing in general, even if it's not your favorite?
Kofu Veluza is my current brew.
Very nice.
I have a 60 that I've landed on that I think is really, really clean, and I need to take it to some locals. It's a little tough for me to get to locals because of where I live in Charlotte. I live on the southern part, and it's kind of a bit of a way to go to
it's a
Rally
drive.
Squirrel. It's a little bit of a way to get to GSG. I think my closest LGS is Grand Slam, and Grand Slam is great. I love that place.
Yeah.
Not a lot of masters play at Grand Slam because it's far away for everyone else. So I think if I'm able to get there next Friday, I'm going to take Kofu Veluza and we'll see what happens, right? Because I'm running Gravity Gemstone. Gravity Mountain is my stadium of choice because everyone's running stage 2s. Black Belt's training. I'm cooking. We're in the kitchen.
Okay. What's your ace spec of choice in that deck?
That would be Brilliant Blender.
Okay,
to put all 4 Kofus in the discard turn 1, and I can tutor it with Arvin.
That's good.
So
that makes sense.
I had a feeling that you'd say that.
Yeah.
I didn't know, because sometimes you'll also hit me with a total curveball when you're talking about your deck lists, and I'll be like, okay, the natural inclusion in that is probably Brilliant Blender, and then you're like, nah, dude, I'm running the Cape, and I'm like, oh, whatever. I've given up on guessing what you're about to play next because so frequently I'm proven wrong.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Cool, I've been working with James, who's in the community as well. We actually went to a challenge not too long ago about my Palafin EX deck, which is one that you faced against me not too long ago, or you saw me play at Buzz City not too terribly long ago. I think, Johnny, you were there too, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yep.
And
I wish I could have played against that.
It is the list. I'm getting a little close to refine. That's going to be my main deck of choice post rotation. Is Palafin EX is my current focus, right? So I think I'm tweaking the 60 a little bit to a way that can get 1-hit KOs on Zard. with things like Monkey Dory and Black Belts training. Now that we have access to Black Belts training, that gives an extra. That's an extra 40 damage on EXs. Everyone is running EXs, and then like
these don't exist anymore.
So with Monkey Dory, Luminous, a little dark, like just some tiny tweaks with it. I think I'm getting close to it, but this Kofu Veluza list has my brain in a headlock, so I've taken a little bit of a detour with that. Gotcha. Which on paper, everyone and their grandmother is like, "Oh man, Kofu came out. This looks kind of cool. Oh, Veluza's in the build. It was the building battle, right? That's what actually like.
That's true.
Everyone saw the building battle when the pre-release happened, and they're like, "Oh, there might be something here," and then nobody did anything with it.
Yeah, it is very sad because I really like that. I like Veluza as a Pokemon. I think it's super cool that it just turns itself into food when it's scared.
I mean, its biggest benefit, right, is that you can use TMs with it. It reduces the cost of TMs. So the 60 that I have right now has the 2 damage Halucha that drops the flying kick Halucha that puts 10 damage counters on 2 Pokemon on the bench. And then I can just TM Blindside for free. It's a knock. Yeah.
What?
I can Crisis Punch for free. Yes. I told you, I'm cooking.
Yo, making the TM Blindside work. That is crazy.
I've never heard of anyone making TM Blindside work. That's incredible.
We're in the kitchen.
That's been like my dream for like a Lost Box build, is to like try to get Blindside to work with like Cram, and it's just like it's not quite good enough.
Every time I want to use Blindside, I would much rather just use Sable.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's super
or like
fair.
Counter Catcher and Crisis Punch, which feels unfortunate. This dude, Crabominable's nuts too.
Yeah, 250 for 1 water.
250 good.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I run 3 jets and 4 switches so that I can keep that online, but 9 times out of 10, by the time I have Veluzas online, I'm already in the late game prize trade, and they're getting only single prizes down because the deck doesn't run EXs aside from Pheasantipity, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
So I'll post my 60 after next Friday in the Pokemon Discord, and you can see what I'm cooking. But I'm kind of holding it to my chest right now just to kind of spring it on people.
As you should.
Got to keep it secret. Keep it close.
Super hype. I love that idea. That whole premise is super cool, and I love decks that utilize the TMs really well. And as Johnny and I have frequently discussed, and as a video that I will be posting sometime this week mentions, there is a huge advantage in playing exclusively single prize Pokemon. It's why Ancient Box is being considered by many people in upcoming formats. It's why I personally think that, and Johnny, I'm sure will agree with me, is a top contender for decks right now, and nobody knows it. It is so valuable to not lose 2 prizes and to give yourself the opportunity to make tempo plays with just single prize Pokemon, because Iron Hands is so not prevalent in the format right now. It feels really good.
Yeah.
And I think you are one of few people who realizes that strength of single prize decks.
It's strong. I think the issue with it, and what turns most people off to it, is that it requires a lot of extra effort to make work in a way that's cohesive, right? It's so easy to just slap EXs in there. Like look at Thorns, or like you could use like any deck that uses Teal Mask Ogerpon. It's so strong because of the value that it gives that it seems like a no-brainer. And then you look at like a deck like United Wings. I mean, it's not really hurt by rotation, but like it's not as strong, I guess.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I have to like fill the discard up. Yeah, there's cards to do it, but like, why? By the time I get it, the perception is by the time I get there, I've already lost. The reality is that you have options. Like you can make it work if you're willing to put the time in to like play test, and having people that you can throw yourself against. Not that live is bad. I don't want to talk too bad.
Live is bad.
Live.
It's okay.
The shuffler is bad.
Live is terrible sometimes.
Live is a really bad client, in fact.
It needs love. That's what I'll say.
That's true.
It is difficult to play test with any like meaningful progression with live,
Yeah.
unless you're doing it with someone you're like having a dialogue with, You can't just thumbs up emote and then like get your feedback, right?
True.
So
that is really unfortunate.
Chat feature win.
We're never gonna get chat
never.
Feature, dude. So much.
There'll
It'll be like, didn't League of Legends implement voice chat recently? It'll be shut down just as quickly, guaranteed, because somebody's gonna say something absolutely heinous and get the whole thing shut down. And I'm just not ready for that. Oh man, Twin Leaf when, dude? That'll be great. I'm fine with Twin Leaf staying in beta or in open beta right now, because as soon as it gets fully developed, they're gonna get a C&D, and I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Big sad. Wow, that is super cool. Love that you're playing Veluza. I love that you're playing the Kofu deck. I wish Kofu was a better card so that it would be worth just actually playing one copy of it. But that's still really, really cool.
I splashed a couple copies of it in my Palafin deck recently because I was using Iono. Because, all right, so for those that don't know, Palafin EX can only be placed as an evolution with the vanilla version of Palafin's ability 0 to hero, which only triggers if it moves from the active to the bench. So that's already a lot of moving parts, which means that if you have a Palafin EX in your hand, that is a dead card, and that is not good. But Kofu enables me to put those back into the deck, or to the bottom of the deck, so I'm never going to draw them, and then I get +4 out of it, right? So I pivoted from Iono to Kofu in that deck. I actually had to order some full art Kofus, because like now I have 2 decks that run it for some reason. I don't know how that happened, but
full art Kofu looks really cool too. I like his apron a lot.
Yeah. But
that's giving me a spicy thought to like splash a 1-of Kofu in like Lost Box, actually.
Bro, don't do that. Don't do that.
Do it. Send it.
I'm kind of feeling that, like, because sometimes you just end up with energy in hand.
This is true. I've had a similar thought with like Crispin.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar like idea there. Crispin might be like maybe more, I don't know, meta viable maybe, but yeah, just that idea of like sometimes, especially late game, I feel like sometimes in Lost Box I'm like, I've curated like half my energies into hand, and I really need those back in the deck right now.
Yeah, I mean, plus with Crispin too, like with the absence of we're losing double turbo, Crispin is the only close solution to getting around a Pokemon that needs 2 energies in one turn.
Yeah,
this is
which
true.
Stinks, but
no, I'm cool with it. Although I do hope we get another double colorless print of some kind in the future.
Yeah,
I've got my own theories of like what cards we're about to get. Like I firmly believe we're on the cusp of getting a level ball. Put this in the montage of my predictions that are totally nonsense but absolutely come true. Just like last episode. I really think we're getting a level ball reprint soon, and I'll be so hype if we do. But yeah, to that very same effect, it's cool to have Crispin as an option. I don't think I'll end up running it in the final build, but it's something to consider, because like that's Regigigas getting done faster. It's all kinds of stuff like that. It's really, really potent. So moving swiftly on from there. So that is that your current one, or just what you're currently your current favorite, or just what you're currently playing?
That's what I'm currently playing. Okay. Anyone that knows me or knows that I play rogue decks knows that I'm a fan of the mill archetype.
Oh yeah.
Because that's always fun, especially Lost Box. I love playing against Lost Box with mill. Oh, amazing. You're doing my job for me. It's great. But with losing like Pokemon Go Blastoise hurts. Like there's no way, probably rightfully so, there's not a lot of ways in the Pokemon TCG right now to do things in general with special energy. I've been cooking a list that uses Lapras EX with Larimar Rain. The issue with that is that getting that online requires Sparkling Crystal, Luminous Energy with multiple attaches, and a lot more setup than I'm comfortable with. Whereas previously I could just, Irida, Squirtle, Rare Candy. All right, Tutor Blastoise with Ultra Ball. Boom. I can attach 6 direct from deck every turn. It ends my turn, but that's like huge momentum for mill lists.
Yeah.
I still want to make Meowscarada work. That is
cool.
the mantra of every rogue deck builder is I just want it to work, and I still firmly believe it needs some backup attacker to just get there. And I think I might try the damage drop Halucha because like Meowscarada needs damage counters in order to be online, but it falls victim to DTE being gone, right? And you have you have Gardenia's Vigor. Okay.
You won't after DTE rotates.
That's right. Oh god, it's worth the deck's dead.
Yeah.
No.
Pretty much.
It's got to be a Crispin angle at that point.
Yeah.
Crispin, Neo
Well,
upper.
you can't do Crispin unless you're using 2 different types of energy in the deck. It has to be 2 different types.
True.
Well, I wonder if there's even something to be said. Like, I wonder if you go for like a. No, that's ridiculous. I was thinking briefly. I was like, what if you put like a Frostlass or like a Monkey Dory or some combination thereof in the deck so that you've got more moving damage? But then I was like, there's no universe where I'm getting Meowscarada and Frostlass and Monkey Dory active. Like, that's just not happening.
Nah,
I don't believe it.
It's tricky, right? And that's kind of like the rogue problem is that there are a lot of starters that like could be great ideas. Like I was cooking an Arbok EX hand control deck at one point.
Oh, I love Arbok.
And like there's starters and some cards that are there, but it feels like the Pokemon Company has these ideas for concepts. That's a weird turn of phrase. Has like starts of concepts and then just does nothing with them.
Yeah, they'll have concept of a plan for sure.
Yeah. And so like there are control decks out there. There's like bird control, but I want something that's a little more unorthodox. Like a hand control deck is really attractive to me because and we have 0-6 Machinations, we have Hand Tremor
with Banette coming out.
Like it's there, right? But for a lot of decks, I can't tell you the number of decks that I've had just in the bin that I just gave up on.
Oh man, gotta bring back like Magnezone control.
Right, exactly.
Crushing hammers over and over again every single turn. Get the items back.
Gross. But also, please bring back Junk Arm. Don't.
No, I will be there right there alongside you with that idea for Banette control. I really want that to work.
No, I'm with you. We can all same 60 to a challenge just for kicks 100%. And gigs. I think that'll be awesome. I love Banette. I think having just the option to also like, if your opponent is able to somehow get around your strategy, just also throw in a Bayonet EX and just be like, oh, that's a lot of cards you got. Too bad you can't play them. And also, now that you've got all those cards in your hand, explode.
Yeah.
Go, my Scarab.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Oh,
super cool. Love that.
So I guess with that, kind of jumping along with what you've been playing recently and what you're interested in. What are some of your favorites from past formats? Like, what are your favorite rogue decks that you've tried that may not, be in standard right now?
I would probably say my Bombardier deck. So to kind of elevator pitch this deck, it uses Bombardier EX, which has the 1 energy tutor 2 Pokemon from your deck. And then it's got its second attack for 3 energies. It does 130 damage, and you can return it and all cards attached to your hand. So I would run Klefki, Mimikyu, and Zatu's. So I would just bench it, double attach with Zatu, Jet Energy it out, Defiance Band, and just slap for like 130 plus every turn. It goes right to my hand, and then Klefki. And then the opponent's just like locked out. That deck was a lot of fun, but like without a way in the game that's standard legal right now to tutor or work with or search for special energies. If I don't have a Jet in hand, or if I get Iono'd, it's like I'm out of gas. Oops.
Yeah.
That's probably one of my favorites. Oh gosh. Yeah, I think my OG Tusk Mill was one of my best brews that I did.
It was so cool.
Hitting the opponent and it like being a race to the bottom of their deck is like was really fun to me. And I still think it's doable, just not yet. So I've got the deck on the shelf. I also have a Vikavolt deck that I played for a little while that was really fun, where it does damage based off of the number of Charge-a-Bugs on the bench.
Yeah, with the Shadow Clone Charge-a-Bug.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was sick.
That deck is standard legal, but it's just like, it's another one of those non-starters that requires so much setup. So in the current format, it's really tough because a lot of decks are turbo, like online turn 2, turn 3, you know.
Yeah.
They're already hitting for like single prizers, like a boss's orders crumples the whole thing, and it's just like, you know, and sometimes I'll sit with those lists and kind of tinker with it a little bit. I think the only downside to playing Rogue, if I had to say that there is a downside, is that some players don't really take me seriously. And what I primarily mean by that is, like, when I ask for feedback on a 60, most people are like, I don't know what to suggest because I don't know what this is.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like, there are people like Mabel in the Charlotte Discord is really good at this. Like, and April too. There's a couple people that humor me, I guess. But most of the time I sit down with people and they're like, I don't know, man. And I'm just like, okay, so.
Yeah.
But what if you didn't know or tried to?
Yeah.
But like occasionally I'll have an idea, like my Palafini X deck, where it just catches someone's eye enough to where they're like, why don't you try this? And then I'm like, ooh, yes. Because most of my deck building's kind of in a vacuum, which sort of stinks. Because like, with a meta deck, you can just be like, here's my 60 for Roaring Moon. Yeah. What am I missing? And then Roaring Moon players will be like, I got you. I know exactly what this needs, or I know what the weaknesses are. Right, but I don't really have that luxury. So that kind of stinks. But
it's definitely a double-edged sword, because at the same time as you are able to surprise your opponents, you're also kind of forcing yourself to surprise the people that you want to help you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like that just feels bad. I've been on the rogue deck train before. And it feels bad sometimes. For instance, like lately, in addition to playing Lost Zone, luckily that is a pre-established archetype, so I've been able to kind of bounce ideas off of Johnny and Zach and a couple of other players. But now, like, I'm and this is the sauce. It's going to be kind of good for a little bit. Future Hands is low-key really good right now. And it just feels really potent to use. Obviously, it's got its shortcomings because, of course, it does. But, like, I can't talk to anybody about, like, oh, what should this Future Hands deck play? Because people are like, what are you talking about? That's a bad deck. Go away from me.
Yeah. It's like I said at the top, like, my discussion with Shane was really insightful because I learned a little bit about myself in that I play Pokemon to have fun.
Yeah.
Other people's vision of fun might be different. In Shane's case, his fun is winning, and he does it very well. And gambling, I guess. Our resident Lugia friend.
Coin Flipper Deluxe.
Yeah. But, like, I can take the good with the bad, because at the end of the day, like, I'm going to take this Veluza deck to Rally Squirrel next Friday, and I'm going to have a blast. And I might make someone uncomfortable with it. Like,
that's the dream.
Yeah. You'll catch them off guard too, because there's a lot of people who because they don't respect like rogue decks, they just don't know what to do, like you said, and it's that taking that, like, making someone uncomfortable to an extreme is like, that's like the pinnacle right there.
Yep.
With rogue decks.
It's very disruptive because, like I said, like, these people master their deck. Like Sammy. Sammy's a great example. Amazing player in the game. Good at Miraidon, amazing at Zard. But if you're able to disrupt his line of thinking, it puts the train off the tracks, and you can ride that momentum to a win.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Often people, you'll just get outplayed. Like, it happens. Like, or you'll draw bad. It's
these things happen. It's just a byproduct of the TCG.
Yep.
That's super cool, though. Do you have anything that you're looking forward to as far as rogue decks go?
I'm looking at the hop cards.
The hop cards?
I'm looking at the hop cards.
I fear that you might not be able to call that stuff rogue.
Yeah, they're really good, but, like, I'm looking at the damage reduction portion of the hop cards.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because metal has a lot of damage reduction in it.
Yes.
I've been cooking a Revavroom EX list also on the side.
Oh,
and
I'm
like, okay, metal has a lot of acceleration, which is what most people use it for. Like people use Archaludon EX, Penny, they get good value out of the Archaludon. They just recur it, just metal. Dialga, I guess not anymore now with rotation. But there were a couple turns in my playtesting with one of my friends from Ohio where I had like 70 damage minus in a turn. And I'm like, if I put a big body out, I can just stall like this if I really wanted to. To be clear, and I don't think that stall is viable. I don't think it's good. No one likes to play it. It's not fun to play. I
like certain stall. I like wall decks. For example, like, and let me be clear. I mean, like something like Dracozolt VMAX, or like Stonejourner VMAX, or something like that, where it's like, here's a big body, try to knock it out. Oh, you didn't? Bummer. Try again next turn after I heal all of this damage off.
Yeah.
And that stuff is cool to me. I am not a Snorlax fan, and while I do understand there is value in what its presence did to the game, in that it introduced this way of thinking about control decks, I do value that. Yeah. However, I think the gameplay loop of Snorlax stall is it's horrendous to watch. It's horrendous to play. It is horrendous to play against. It is really bad. It is to me kind of what Alakazam EX is. It's like, this is a cool effect that is valuable to have in the game, but its current iteration is overtuned in one direction or the other. Yeah. And as a result of that, I think it kind of puts us at this position where, like, I don't like the idea of Snorlax stall, but there's something to be gained from it. Yeah. And I think that line of thinking for stall type decks is really cool. Yes. I like those ideas. And I like, for instance, as far as like that whole like thought process for like a big body, I remember when James first started building Dialga V-Star when Mintang came out, before like Archaludon and all this other stuff. He played it with Full Metal Lab and Hero's Cape. And there was a turn where I was playing up against him when I was playing Lawson Box, when it still ran Hoopa EX. And there was a turn where I could have done like 430 damage to him, and it still would not have knocked him out. And it was I remember looking at that and being like, this is the worst thing I've ever experienced. Why is he so big? Get this out of my face. It's stuff like that. It's a cool moment to have when you're just like, what am I even doing here at this table?
I think my biggest problem with Snorlax stall is the retreat lock. I think that having that interaction being stolen from you makes that untenable. Yeah. It's great in terms of letting the Snorlax player exist for more turns, but draw pass is just not fun.
It feels bad.
To play.
I wish I liked actually I think the card that did this type of idea really well, where it was like a big body in the active, but your player isn't really doing a whole lot, and also like you get some value out of it, even if it's not retreat lock, was another Snorlax card, and it was Gormandize Snorlax. That is a Hall of Fame card for me. Gormandize Snorlax was so good. I miss it every day. It was so good. And I hope we see it again, because it was just such a cool effect to have in the game. For those who are like new to the game and are not aware, let me pull it up, because some people just won't know. Gormandize Snorlax is oh my gosh, how old is this card? It is originally released in, what set is that? Vivid Voltage. And it has 130 HP. An attack that's not worth using, but its Gormandize ability, people played 4 of it in control decks. and it was once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can draw until you have 7 cards in your hand, and if you use this ability, your turn ends. It's just it's a great way to draw cards. It's a big enough body that you're probably not getting knocked out turn 1. I mean, now it's a little different because of Raging Bolt, but like at the time it was potent enough that it would buy you at least 1 turn and sometimes more. Because I mean, we also had like Scoop Up Net at the time and stuff like that to help you loop Snorlaxes. So yeah,
there's got to be a GLC deck around that.
I don't know if there's a GLC deck around it, especially because GLC will just rather play Tropical Beach. But
true.
But it's still a cool thing to entertain mentally. I'm trying to think of what else. So we had a couple other things on the docket. I guess kind of along that same line of thinking, really. Are there any, like, what are some Hall of Fame rogue cards for you? Like,
cards.
Yeah, like individual cards. So, like, for example, my go-to, like, Gormandize Snorlax is one. My beloved, what is this? My beloved Princess Curtain Diancie is another classic rogue deck choice. Like Pogo Blastoise, any cards like that are like, this is only really good in like this rogue deck, but I like it a lot.
I think I am gonna steal your answer. I think Princess Curtain Diancie is probably one of my favorites.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, Princess Curtain prevents the effects of supporters being used on your benched basics, which is humongously important because I have had, in my entire tenure of using Princess Curtain, which I primarily use it in my mill deck to protect Barboach while I'm setting up for a Wish Cache play, which, by the way, for those that don't know, the Wish Cache I'm talking about specifically is Raging and Rocking, where for 1 fighting energy, you discard the top card of your opponent's deck for each fighting energy attached to him.
Yep.
If you use Reversal Energy, where your opponent has less prize cards than you do, it counts as 3 of all energy types, including fighting.
So good.
So Princess Curtain Diancie on active would protect Barboach while I'm using Pokemon Go Blastoise to fill it up.
Yeah.
And
so cool.
There were a couple of moments where there was one time I had to call a judge because this person, usually if someone is like, I'm going to boss out and I have Diancie out, I'll be like, hey man, you can take it back if you want. Princess Curtain's up. It'll fizzle. I think in a challenge one time, I judge called on that because they didn't believe me. And
they didn't believe you.
They wanted to use another supporter in the turn. And I'm like, we are in a league event. You have used your supporter for the turn and it fizzles. Legally, you have played the card.
Holy.
If it's locals, take it back.
Yeah.
You didn't know. It's reading a card explains the card. It's fine.
Yeah.
In this specific instance, like it was a little heated. But
it happens.
That's in my Hall of Fame. I'm trying to think of cards that are not widely used that aren't deck specifically. Because like I can rattle off so many examples of key playmaker cards that are just slept on. Like Carmine, for example, is one that I think that people are not using very frequently.
Yeah. It's like what Lugia and Cerulege use it pretty exclusively.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like it's a supporter you can use on your first turn, and if you need to load your discard up on the first turn too, or if your hand just stinks, like I personally prefer Carmine over Squawkabilly EX.
Yeah,
I think Squawkabilly EX
without a 2-prize liability
is an awful card in my opinion. Its HP is low. This is a hot take of mine. I think it's an awful card. It's a boss target. It stays on the board, right? Like you get use of it one time, and then that's it. And I think that that's not great when a card like Carmine exists that you can use on your first turn. But that's
Squawk makes me yearn for the days of Crobat V, dude. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
I love Crobat V.
Yeah.
I told myself I was not going to get on my Squawkabilly soapbox, and here I am on it.
No, that's
so
okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I'm happy to hear about it. I love hearing that there are niche cards that people hate as well, because that's just, it's cool to think about, especially because like you have a really unique like stance on this, just by virtue of the fact that you do design games for a living. Like, so you understand how that works. It's not like you're just somebody who's like, this is bad because I think it's stupid. It's like you have experience creating games, and even if they're not TCGs, like you understand what makes a game itself good, whether that's interaction with your opponents or like combos of abilities and things like that. And so it's cool to get that perspective.
I think most of it comes from I do game programming specifically.
Yeah.
So like as a programmer, and there's a couple of other programmers in the Pokemon community, learning programming fundamentally changes how you think. Like I always encourage people to like pick it up, even as a hobby. It's a little difficult, but like once you get over that and start changing and tweaking how you approach problems and how to solve them, it just unlocks something, right? And I take that into my Pokemon deck building. Yeah. I'm like, how do I make I don't know. I'm running out of examples because like I've name dropped pretty much every rogue deck. How do I make Revavroom EX work? Like the pieces are there. How do I like tweak this so that it covers another weakness or like shortcoming of it? For Revavroom, it's a little difficult, but like
it's also valuable mental practice. I don't mean to like yap too much, but like as like a creative person myself, like I find myself wanting for creativity, and an exercise that I was first introduced to from Chris Ramsey on YouTube. He's a magician, puzzler, and like just overall creative. He's a great film guy. He's got a couple podcasts. He made this video about how to create a magic trick. And he's like, the first thing that I do in my creative process when it comes to anything is I'll take like an object or like the focus of what I want to be creative about, and I'll ask questions about it. So for instance, like I've got this can of Olipop, not sponsored, but like he'd be like, oh, I'd ask like, why is this round? Why is it this color? Why is it shaped like this? Why is it metal? Is there a reason that it can kind of crumple and fold on itself? Like, what happens if it couldn't do that? Like, what if it was square instead? Like things like that, that inspire creativity, and having a canvas of like, oh, like I've got this really cool idea for a deck that, like for instance, like with Revavroom, it's like, oh, what are really great tools that would go with Revavroom, or like what does this get the best use? What gets the best use out of having a bunch of tools like that? And having that creative thought process makes you a better creative, I think, and also just like it gives you, if you do ever decide to play like a meta deck full time, like it gives you the opportunity to just think outside of the box more, which I think is super valuable.
Well, I think that touches on like kind of the idea of like deck building in general, right? Like having that knowledge of what niche cards do and what like niche interactions exist within the game itself. I think that like brings you back into like really good deck building, even for like the meta decks, because then you can start, looking at stuff from a different perspective, and you can say, okay, well, this is the way, something's working, but what if we tried it differently? I think like one of the coolest examples of that, honestly, was last year actually with like Charizard EX, and more specifically with like the idea of like, what if we go away from using Arceus as the foil to Charizard and stop using it as a backup attacker and start using Pidgeot EX as this, way to tutor stuff out instead, be where it combos in perfectly, it uses rare candy that already exists. Like suddenly you have a different way to look at the deck. And yeah, I know that like that was like, one of the biggest like just innovations for that deck. It changed everything about the way that people play Charizard, and now it kind of drove Charizard into like the infamy that it's had in the last 2 years nearly now.
Yeah, it's Hall of Fame like, now.
Yeah,
True.
Pretty much
a crazy deck. I wonder.
No, go ahead.
I was thinking like, I wonder how many times like people in the Charlotte Discord specifically have just complained and been like, I've read the sentence like, oh, of course my opponent just has like the Arven into rare candy for a Sealstone into like rare candy Pidgeot, rare candy Charizard the second turn of the game, even though I just judged them. It's like, yeah, it just happens.
Yeah. but it's just like, it's things like that, like knowing, like, because of stuff like that, that's kind of how you end up like play testing rogue decks into like better versions, and then conversely taking those and working on meta decks. Like, I mean, that the Charizard evolution, or like that kind of changeover from like Arceus to Pidgeot, was something that originally I was doing kind of the same thing. I had like a Meowscarada deck that I was working on, and I was like, Arceus in this, I like, at first I didn't have Arceus, and I was like just trying to do the Whimsicott stuff before the rotation happened. And then after rotation, it's like, okay, well, you can't use that anymore. So what do? Arceus, right? It's easy. It comes out. DTE works perfect with Arceus. You can power up another one and have like a backup attack if you need it. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't do everything that I want it to do. And at the end of the day, like, it's a lot of more moving parts. Well, what if I tried to do something differently with this? And it's like, what about Pidgeot, right? Like, Pidgeot does over 2 turns what Arceus does in 1 turn, and then over 3 turns does better. So you're more returns for a similar investment. And, like, that's what I threw in. And then kind of around the same time, like, Charizard blew up. And so, like, at my locals at the time back in Tampa, I was absolutely like melting just challenges and weekly like tournaments and stuff, because it was just like, okay, well, like, half the player base is running Charizard, so yeah, sure, you're done. It's Greenzard coming back in.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's just like, all that to say, yeah, like I said, like, I think rogue deck building is better deck building, and it's a good way for players to learn how to properly deck build. Because I think that's one of the biggest issues, is like a lot of people who are like starting out with like the TCG, and I like, as a very shameless Reddit browser, I'll constantly see on like the live subreddit and the Pokemon trading card subreddit, people are just like, oh, this is my 60 and it's really cool. And it's like, dog, you threw together like Rapidash and Arcanine and Charizard and something else, and you've got like 51 ofs, and I don't even think Tord would touch this deck, like, and it's like, how do you tell someone like that, I'm sorry, like, you're new to the game and you kind of suck at deck building, without like being mean about it at a certain point.
I have a kind of, not really a hot take, but like, I think that's part of the process. It's like, most people, like, the way that I personally approach deck building is not how I always approached it, right? I used to be like that myself. Like, I had my first Meowscarada list, that was the deck that I built immediately after Chenpao, was like Vespiquen, like the one where you have to like shuffle a Coney back into the deck for 1 grass energy, and I'm like using Artisan to like get him out, and then using Meowscarada as a back. Like, it sucked. It really sucked. Okay, yeah, Charizard EX is weak to grass. I ran super effective glasses. Yes, I knocked out a Zard EX once with it. It was cool, but like, I had to have my roommate at the time tell me like, hey, this deck sucks, and I needed to hear that at the time. Now I approach it like when a new set comes out, like Journey Together is an example. My process now is like, I'll take a look at the cards and I'll read the cards, which sounds stupid on paper. It sounds really simple, right?
Reading the cards?
I'm trusting the process.
Right. So like, when people, like you were saying, like, a lot of people will come into the trading card game and they'll be like, okay, they'll approach it one of 2 ways. One, they'll be like, what cards do I like that I want to make work? Or 2, what decks are winning right now? Let me go to Limitless and find out the 60 that's like got top results. Those are the 2 paths. And so like, both of those are valid. It's fine. But if you want to like deck build, there are fundamental skills. Like, okay, calling back to my Red Blue days, when the Pokemon trading card game first came out, like base to jungle, there was a strategy guide for the Pokemon trading card game. Oh, wow. I read that religiously. Do you want to know what the advice was back then?
Sure.
22 energies. No more,
Jail.
no less.
Jail.
Yo.
Yes.
Prison.
I've got to have 4 bills at all time. Like, just...
Well,
that
4 bills
was
made
that,
sense.
That was well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was a crack card. Like it's an item card that lets you draw 2. It's insane
for computer research.
Oh god, yeah. Pokemon breeders, not a supporter, by the way. Like it's just so like deck building.
No supporters existing in general, frankly, back then.
Right.
Oh, god. Yeah.
So I mean, deck building.
We gotta play some retro at some point. That'll be hype.
Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, deck building is like the way I approach it now. I guess I should finish my thought. Is that like I'll take a set like Journey Together as an example. I'll look at the set and I'll kind of take notes of what abilities on most cards are like, oh, this feels like a thread, right? This is a thread that TCPI is putting out to people, right? Because there's always going to be pack filler. Yeah. Those cards are usually really easy to identify, especially if you look at a set like 151, where I know that's a collector's set, but there's some heat in it.
Most of the set,
yeah,
filler.
Right. So like there's going to be pack filler. There's always pack filler in TCG.
Yeah, certainly.
But there's like some like I don't know, like Hop's Dub Wool is a good example of a card in Journey Together.
Low-key gas.
The ability when you play the Pokemon from your hand to evolve it, you can switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. That is a boss's orders on an ability.
It's really
that
good.
You can then penny up or Professor Turo's up and do it again for free. And like, so I'll take a note of what cards are notable or like strike my fancy. And then I'll be like, okay, what cards are in rotation that would supplement that? And I'll start to kind of chisel away at it. But like you were saying, like there are unspoken rules to deck building. Like your quantities of cards are pivotal. Like, does your deck need 4 Arvins? Do you run tools? Will you get value out of it? Right. So, and like, do you use Professor's Research or do you use Iono? Or like, do you use a mix of both? Like, what value do you get? And like, the probability, knowing probabilities is a huge benefit, right? Because like, if you have a 4 of, you're probably going to see it more frequently. That's just how it goes.
It's interesting too, because we're past the days of like, well, we're mostly past the days of like the optimal supporter lineup is like 4 research, 4 boss, 4 Iono. Like that's not like, it's a good starting point, frankly. It's like totally fine. It's like, if you really need a skeleton of supporters and can't think of anything else, sure, whatever. Run those 12. I don't think you're going to get very far, but it's like that we're just not in that universe anymore. We're not in the Arceus Decidueye Pikachu universe where you can get away with that.
Not gonna lie, that's actually like the backbone for my my line of thinking on like turbo hands.
That's also
100%
how
like my backbone
works.
there. Yeah,
there was that Archaludon that ran straight consistency like that and won a tourney.
It's kind of funny to see that kind of pop back up.
Yeah, no, it's super funny because I'm like, wait a minute, this is the World's 2022 format. What are you doing? What are you doing here? But it's super cool. And like, to quote my favorite cartoon dog, sucking at something is the first step to being kind of good at something. You have to start deck building. You have to be bad at deck building before you can get good at it. I remember I have to this day, like I still like have a photo saved of my first regional deck list. So like Charlotte regionals in 2020 in the Silver Tempest format. I think that was 2021. Or 2022. But that was my first major event in Pokemon, period. No cups, no challenges prior. I just raw dogged straight into regionals at Charlotte. And I was like, but I took Palkia and Teleon with a 1-2 Alolan Vulpix V-Star to combat like all the Lugia that I was expecting to see, because you couldn't get Vulpix off of like the prizes without running something like Peonia, and I was like, not gonna do that. But you could get the Vulpix V, so I grabbed, like, had Hisui and Heavy Ball. But I look back at that list and I was like, this was kind of bad. Like, there were parts of it that I still stand by. 2 Cross Switcher in there is still so gas. But like there are some cards in there that I'm like, why did I do this like this? Why did I build this way in particular?
I to this day ask myself that all the time about stuff I do.
Yeah, and so like it's that same process of you have to be bad at something before you can be good at something. And there's ways to become better at something actively. Like, you can look at good decks and see, like, if you have a really analytical mind, you can like be like, okay, why is like my first thing in my head was like, why is Mew VMAX good? But that's the poor example, because like you can look at like why is Charizard good right now? It's like, oh, because it has synergy with like Arven, because you're able to get Forest Sealstone, and that gets you your other search, and it gets you your item, and because you so frequently want items in this deck, that's what makes that synergy good. But for like, and you have to kind of understand the ins and outs of like why combos are good, why different like card synergies are good, and you have to analyze those. And you can glean a lot from those strategies. Like, for instance, like I know Johnny and I are both avid like World's Championship deck. Like we'll buy the whole set, and just like throw them in some clear Dragon Shields and like just play them. We'll either like shadow box with them, or like I know he and I have gone back and forth with just like playing that format before, and it's a lot of fun. But just being able to analyze like, how do top decks perform? Why are they built the way they are? And being able to look at that and see, okay, how can I take this mindset and tweak it to fit something like Revavroom EX, like Meowscarada EX? I remember when I was building Meowscarada, I just took the Rotom and Arven package and Pidgeot package from Charizard. I ripped it straight into a Meowscarada deck. And it worked really well. I threw in Gardenia's Vigor and switched out. I didn't do any DTE. I did grass only, and it worked really, really well. I remember, Bryan, you and I talked about that for a while, and it worked pretty good, at least in my experience. It never got to where I wanted it to. I never gave it the attention it probably deserved. But like being able to like emulate stuff like that, it's like, okay, you can take something like, okay, I'm building a stage 2 deck. Let's look at a really popular stage 2 deck and see why it's good. Okay, Dragapult. It's got little guys that can draw cards. Gardevoir, it's got little guys that can draw cards. Okay, this stage 2 that I am trying to build doesn't have access to an engine like that. Let's see something like Charizard. Okay, Charizard doesn't have those little guys, but it does have a really potent tutor and like it does have a really potent tutor engine, right? Like where you're able to just get exactly the pieces you need for your combos. And it runs combos that play into what it needs to get running. And that's the kind of stuff that you want to be looking for when you're like building decks. Like you can learn a lot from just emulating stuff that's already good. I have been known to say in recent history, like there is no honor in being a contrarian. Like you can absolutely use a popular way of doing something to accomplish a similar effect with something that you're doing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. Some things are good just because they're good, and there's a reason that people play them, you know?
And that's why I said, like, especially at the top, and I want to emphasize it, so that's why I'm bringing it back up. It's like, I don't fault anyone for playing a meta deck. They're meta for a reason. They work, right? But, like, it's just, I don't... I respect it, but I don't subscribe to it. Is how I approach it. But like, totally I can still take, like, if I have a single prizer deck, Miraidon's my blueprint for the number for like the supporter lines, because that is a basic heavy deck that needs consistency and needs to get its pieces quick, and it's very effective with it. Okay, what can I take out of that and adapt to Veluza, or like not saying that that's part of my list. My list is way different. But there's being a good deck builder means being willing to like admit that you're wrong at a lot of turns, and that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. Like it goes against what we want. We want the good chemicals in the brain. We want to reject the bad stuff, right? But like the reality is that stuff works, and there's no shame in taking like artists. Great example are artists or creatives. Like if I take a tune from a song and like kind of remix it a little bit and like use that as a baseline for a new track, I'm not stealing it. I am repurposing that and building on it, which is like, you can take that same concept for deck building too. I'm getting weirdly philosophical with this. I apologize, but
it's there's a place for it. It's something that people don't really think about. Like, trading card games are really heady, and there's a lot, and part of being a good deck builder is having to go outside of yourself and analyze the way you think as well.
Yep.
And that's very like it's inherently very like self-reflective and like introspective, and it takes, you know, you kind of have to deal with like, oh man, I have some faults in the way I think like this, or like I really want to make Salvatore work, but it's never happening. Stuff like that. And it's totally fun to get philosophical about that stuff.
Yeah, it's fun, and Pokemon's a game that enables that. It encourages it, really. If you like take a step back and think about it, like that's one of the reasons that I love the Pokemon trading card game, and I think that's why a lot of people that in Charlotte and worldwide play the Pokemon trading card game, is because whether you play Rogue or you play Meta or you suck at deck building or you're godlike at it, like you're all valid. Like you can still, you are one lucky coin flip away from winning or losing.
That's
right? And that's awesome. It's like, I don't want to harp on Yu-Gi-Oh too much because this isn't a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast, but like that's one of my biggest problems. And what got me out of the game is because my turn is not my turn. If you spend more money on your deck, you win. Like there's no other way around it. But with Pokemon, it's like you're valid, and that's cool. I think
I like having those points of view as well, like people coming from other card games and stuff like that. Because it is so it's a one-to-one. Like you can very clearly see like shortcomings in design philosophy when you're comparing card games to card games.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not faulting people that play Yu-Gi-Oh! I want to be completely clear. It's just, and it may have changed since I quit. I have no clue. Like as soon as I hit on the Pokemon train,
not at all.
I'm like, wash my hands. I have my regional top 52 Harpy deck chilling up there, and that's that. But I don't know. Pokemon's fun. What a game. What a game we enjoy, right?
Such a cool game, yeah. Side note, I just had this epiphany while we were talking and getting philosophical. Is there a universe where you play Meowscarada with Dusks and counter gain?
The future is the future is unwritten, my friend.
It's just it's a thought I had. It was fleeting. I was like, that's a one energy attack. It's pretty cool.
Well, I have a question for y'all.
Yeah, go for it.
Is Dusk Noir good or bad for the game?
Oh, that is such a great question. I'm gonna let Johnny go first because I've been yapping.
Oh man, it's hard to say because like I have to come from like someone who has like very little like Pokemon TCG knowledge and just very removed from like a lot of card games beyond like kitchen table stuff as a kid, you know. Man, I want to say I'm actually kind of neutral on it. I don't think it's good or bad for the game necessarily. I know that you'll have all the people who, I mean, the card after it existed for like a month or two, suddenly everyone's just like, yeah, this needs to be banned. This needs to be banned. And I was like, okay, well, I can understand that point of view, but I don't think it's that bad. It does go back to like, and like, I've at least like immersed myself in like trying to learn, about other stuff. And like one of my favorite things, like even nowadays, I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh, but I kind of follow some Yu-Gi-Oh content creation purely for like some like old format stuff and like card ban lists and why some things are banned. Because I think it's interesting, honestly. I just think it's really interesting. Yu-Gi-Oh being a game where you can go and get a card from the original set in 1995 or 96 when they were being first printed, and you can add that to your deck like right now, you know. And it's been like that's the 3 decades of a card game, you know. And you can just play this card. And Pokemon is very different, where it's like, no, you have to stick to sometime within the last year and a half to 2 years at this point now, at least in the way Pokemon is played. So I think that's cool. So I went and did digging and research. I'm like, okay, well, what cards were like banned in Pokemon? No cards are banned in Standard, but why are they banned in Expanded? And I saw like the Mismagius, obviously, where it blows itself up, and then you can draw. I think it's up to 7 cards. I don't even think it's draw 7, but I think it's draw up to 7, which is kind of crazy when you look at like something like that compared to
it's filled to 7
now, where like it's up to 7.
Yeah, fill to 7 for sure.
Fill to 7, yep. Yeah, and it's like where Dusk's like do more, really and truly. Like Dusks can be a 1-to-1 like knockout tool. And then obviously you have like the Charizard builds that are just like, oh my god, we're gonna throw Dusks in here because this is a 1-to-1 knockout tool, a way to power Charizard up early on, and a way for Charizard to counter into other Charizards that set up before it, or other like big EXs where maybe it's not a 1-to-1, but you blow yourself up, set damage up, and then punch into something for 210 plus 130, and you're taking out every single stage 2 EX in the game right now. Like, that's kind of crazy how good that is. And honestly, I believe like if Mismagius existed, that Charizard would run that too. If it existed alongside the Dusk, you might even do a split, honestly, of like a Dusk Mismagius like lineup in some like 1-1.
Yeah. Because you'd also stop running Pidgeot. You would just be able to draw.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and that's like that's the thing right there. Exactly. Is like you can start like doing crazy stuff if you get like ideas like that. But because of that, I don't think that Dusks are inherently bad for the game, because you do have to put yourself on the back foot, and in the wrong circumstances, you can actually hamper yourself quite terribly with a Dusk. I have seen plenty of people who they'll do a Dusk play thinking that they've got the drop on you because of that, and then you come back and you can take like a multi-prize turn, and then suddenly you take their Dusk play and you turn it over into a position where it's like, well, now they have like, say they started setting up a Clops on the bench, and you can tell, okay, well, I know they want a Noir. I can KO them to a certain point, get myself to like 1 prize left, and now I take away the ability for them to suddenly Dust Noir something for a better play, because if they do, they give me the win, or I can put them in a position where like, if they're forced into that in like a tiebreaker game, that kind of thing. And if you have a deck that's better at tiebreakers, they don't want to do that,
right?
And they may have to keep themselves in it for just the chance. So you can set up like scenarios where maybe you actually turn that around. So that's why I say, like, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I think it exists. I think it's treading a very fine line, though. I mean, we've harped on it before. I think like Pheasantipede is far more ban worthy than Dust Noir, and Dust Noir is very close to that. If Pheasantipede is like a 10 on the ban worthy list, I would say Dust Noir hits like a 9 probably. Where like it's like if a 10 is like this should be banned, a 9 is like maybe I could take that back to like an 8, where it's like maybe it could be banned. Maybe banning it would be healthy, but I don't think it needs to be. Like very high up. I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of just.
if I can pick your brain a little further, is Pheasantipede and the Dust Noir line potentially ban worthy because it kind of pushes the game outside of a pre-established boundary that people have of like, here's the like an expectation of the pace of the game, like prize trading. Is it because it pushes kind of outside of those and bends the game a little bit in its flexibility? I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, is it because it's on an ability without drawbacks or requirements that are like, okay, Pheasantipede has a requirement, but let's be honest, it's a very easy requirement to get, because like getting knocked out is like intrinsic to the game. Is it because it pushes outside of those boundaries that it's ban worthy, or is there another reason?
I think to a degree it is kind of because it pushes outside those boundaries, but at the same and I see where you're going with this, because it's like, okay, well, if we don't push outside the boundaries of this, are we sticking too much to preconceived notions and not allowing ourselves to evolve with the game evolving? And I totally get that. I think the big issue with Pheasantipede comes from the fact that it's a very it does what it does on a very low risk card, and I think that's where the problem comes in, because a lot of the time Pheasantipede existing means that you have to divert your attention away from major threats that are already existing, which that's, you know, that in itself is intrinsic of the game. And that absolutely happens with other cards. I mean, sometimes you go for the easier target, like, you know, a Rotom, a Squawkabilly, a Lumineon, because they're there, because that's an easier or better target sometimes. Pheasantipity is so low maintenance right now because it's an easier target, but targeting it down doesn't necessarily always solve the issue. And when we're in a format that, you know, stuff like, I mean, we've talked about how good like Night Stretcher is on this podcast before. Like, oh my God, when something like Night Stretcher exists where you can like low risk, okay, well, I'm going to play Pheasantipity. I'm going to take 3 cards. I'm going to leave it there. I'm still going to attack with my main attacker. I have another one in backup. So naturally, I can expect you to say, okay, well, is there a point to going after the attackers if I can get 2 prizes off the Pheasantipity? And then suddenly you drop that Night Stretcher and you're just like, okay, well, I lost the Pheasantipity. I was expecting to lose the Pheasantipity. I'm going to bring it back. You have to deal with it again. And then they don't always have an answer for that. Or because a threat exists and you're on the back foot, Pheasantipity, even if you take a KO that matters, Pheasantipity existing just blows that out of the water. I think the biggest issue also is the fact that it has basically nullified Judge, Iono, and Unfair Stamp to the point that those cards can sometimes just be not worth playing. I think that they're still absolutely worth playing, obviously, for like specific decks and obviously in specific circumstances. But it just makes you, it's like, okay, well, is it worth like taking this KO? Do they have a Pheasantipity? Is it really worth playing this Iono? You know, am I putting them right into what they need to get the Pheasantipity? Yeah. Do they have it on board and it just doesn't matter? Sometimes it still does. It's like, okay, well, late game, I can at least take your 10-card hand, put it down to 2, and force you back into like, you know, 5. But, you know, then you go up against a Golden Go that just is like, okay, well, I've got Pheasantipity and 3 Golden Goes, and I'm drawing right back into those 10 cards that I had before. Yeah. Did you do anything? No. So I don't know. That's like my take. I don't want to ramble too much on that because, you know,
yeah,
and yeah.
I have a different take when it comes to Dusk Noir specifically. We're kind of bringing it back to that, less about Fez. Yeah, because we've rambled about why Fez is bad for the game. I don't think it's necessarily so I think that Dusk Noir is I think it does. I want to be careful with how I word this. I think right now it feels worse for the game than it actually is by virtue of the fact that we have Countercatcher, we have Night Stretcher, and we have Charizard. Those 3 things make this card way better than it currently is. Because you'd think about Dusk Noir back in the Sword and Shield format, right? Against something like Palkia and Inteleon, against something like Arceus and Inteleon, against like, or like even like Arctura, like 130 and you lose a prize wasn't as big a deal back then. But now, because we've got stuff that benefits so much from prize manipulation and from spread damage specifically, Dusclops is no longer just like, oh, like my opponent takes a prize, but I don't need as many damage mods. Now it's, oh, my opponent takes a prize, I get to gust something that's weak into the active, spread damage to a low HP target that my opponent has on their board, and do something like Phantom Dive to knock out like their basic their EX in the active and a guy on the bench and take 3 prizes. Those high impact plays are what makes Dusk Noir so good, and I think it's valuable to have prize manipulation in the format. It's valuable to have like damage spread and stuff like that in the format. I think it's just exacerbated by some of the stuff we have. I think like they're totally fine cards for the game, truly. I really do think that. They feel terrible when they happen to you, but I think they're more good than they are bad because they also open up more strategies, right? Now we've got stuff like Dusk Charizard, and I know I'm a Charizard hater, but I think it's cool that now Charizard gameplay takes some thought. Yes. And like it makes Dragapult like really good. In fact, it makes it like tier 1 next format. But it also like it also enables other zany strategies. I remember when they first came out, like I remember like the Hyper Aroma Lost City Sableye deck was bananas. It was bad, but it was so crazy to think about that this was possible now because we had that option.
Turbo Lost Box with Dusks.
It was crazy. Well, and like you think about, there's other ways to manipulate prizes that are also really good, right? So like Miraidon has Magneton that can just send in a bunch of, and it's literally yellow Milotic from back in the day. And like it's not as potent of an effect because you aren't enabling more, well, because it's so specific to lightning types, it's a little bit more funneled into a specific archetype of deck. Excuse me. But like I think prize manipulation like that is valuable for the game. I think the struggle we have is that there are not enough single prize decks that can survive a Dusknoir that make it like have trouble, right?
Yeah.
Because being able to set yourself back one prize when you can just run all 2 prizers and make your opponent's prize map still be 2/2/2 feels like free cards. But there's also other prize manipulation in the game right now, like Briar, like Iron Hands EX, and there's ways to play around it that people who are just plainly not as good at the game are going to struggle with. And I think that is why it feels so oppressive to so many people, where it's like, if you have a small local scene and there's just one guy who's got Dusknoirs and he's winning every tournament because people can't beat him, like that is an issue where it's like, that sucks for you, dude. Like you got to figure out something to counteract that, because there's also ways where Dusks can really, like Johnny said, ruin your game plan. I was playing against a guy when I was recording earlier today where I was playing Lost Zone, and he started prepping. He was playing Zard, and he started prepping a Dusk. And I realized where we were at in the prize trade that, like, if he pops that Dusk, I go down to, like, basically 1 prize. And it was like, well, now I don't have to prioritize that target with Sableye. I can let him have a dead spot on his bench. Or, like, have him have, like, the Pokestop Temptation button where it's like, hit the button, do it. I know you want to. Call it out to him like the Green Goblin mask, when it's just going to be more beneficial for me and be a detriment to that player. And it's a dead, like, it's stuff like that where there is a lot of counterplay for it, and that's evident in the fact that Dusks aren't present in every deck. You have like stuff that's really potent, like Dusk Zard, Dusk Pult, and even to a lesser extent Dusk Terapagos, which are all good in their own sense. In fact, like the Terapagos deck would be terrible without Dusks. Truly. Because then if you're like, I'd rather play Palkia. Genuinely. But like, I think it enables a lot of strategies that are really cool. It enables a lot of high APM plays that are worth having be legal in the format. I just think that, unfortunately, if you're not as good of a player, you're going to struggle against that strategy. But it also opens it up. So it makes stuff like Iron Hands EX really good right now. It makes Briar plays really good right now. So you can, if we're ever in a circumstance where you are having to deal with a lot of Dusks, consider playing stuff like Iron Hands, like Briar, like this, that, and the third, where you can kind of play around somebody's like predisposition towards taking light prize dinks to further progress their board state. You're like, all right, well, you're going to regret that because I'm about to take 3. And then suddenly that 1 prize loss like feels way more impactful to them. And so for that reason, I think like they're fine for the game. I think they do more good than bad. It feels really bad to go up against them.
It's interesting. Totally I didn't mean to throw the grenade question out there, but
no, I love it.
While we're on the topic of like cards that are in the game, it's really fun to think about because there's nuance to it, right? It's easy to look at cards like Pheasantipity or the Noir line and be like, is this pushing the game's power to a scary place? Like, it's cool that it induces some interaction and like there's a skill ceiling that's required for at least to get good value out of the Dusk line, but like it's fun to see people's perspective on it. So I ask.
Fez, I think, is like I'll be really succinct about it. Fez, I think, is bad for the game for the sense that like there are supporters that do what it does.
Yes.
That you like would have to choose to not play boss to play. And for that reason, it is unhealthy for the game because it makes like a supporter card that is already bad not playable. Because why would I ever play Nimona when Fezandipity just exists and I'm going to be getting knocked out every turn anyways?
Yeah.
I think the issue with Fez is that it's on a Pokemon.
Yeah.
To be honest,
it's on a
like,
body. Even if it says something like it has to be in the active spot, I think it would be far less of a problem.
It needs more friction. Like in a world where you can nest ball it, you can night stretcher it, you can get an extra turn and get it again off of Dialga V-Star. Like
that's a terrible interaction, by the way. I learned that for the first time playing against James, and I was like, this should be illegal.
When James told me that, I was like, my third eye opened. I was like, that is insane because it works.
It's so gross.
But like, I don't know. I am glad to see in the sets that TCPI has put out since printing those cards, they have not carried that tradition on. So they recognize, hey, this is like not healthy to have, at least in rotation. Like at least they're staggering it out to where some of these will rotate before other things. I think that's the power of Pokemon's rotation, and
it's it's such a good system.
I love it. And like Magic has like the type 2 rotation, which some people in the Magic community are like, it's kind of aggressive. It sort of sucks. Like Magic is another high dollar game. But at the same time, I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, Pokemon deliberately designs their set regulation marks to be like, this is an era of the game. Like if you look at regulation H cards right now, it's like you can kind of sort of see the direction that the game is going.
Yes,
like there is a potential world where Boss's Orders rotates. What takes its place?
Ooh.
Right? Like, it's a scary thought, but like it's okay. Of course, like all it takes is TPCI putting out another trainer toolkit, and like it doesn't matter. Everything's off the table. But which, by the way, the trainer toolkit that they came out with recently, the Squawkabilly X one, fantastic. If you're a deck builder and you need staples, pick up a couple of them because it is loaded to the gills with them. And the Squawkabilly EX that comes in that trainer's toolkit is reversed. It is flipped from the original Squawkabilly EX, which is a fun little thing that I found out when organizing my book. So,
wait, is it not a different art altogether?
No, it is the same one. It's just facing a different direction.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on. That looks like it's a different... No, it's definitely a different art because there's no leaf by his head.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it on PokemonCards.com.
It's a different art, but he's facing.
Like it's
very similar. I'm looking at it on
PokemonCards.com. It's practically the same pose. It is
very similar.
Yeah. But
crazy.
Yeah.
Card game. It's great.
It's so cool to have those discussions, though. It's that's really interesting. It's cool to pick your brain too, because you think about deck building so differently than most people do.
Some would say it's wrong. Sometimes I think it's wrong.
Well,
but
some people would say Lugia V-Star is a good deck, so.
Yeah.
So, we could leave that kind of as it is. Oh man, we've kind of exhausted like our question list. So if there's nothing else we really want to talk about, we can kind of wrap it up there.
I just want to like close and say thank you to the Charlotte community, the Pokemon community as a whole. Getting into this, like, I have never ever seen a more welcoming, more open, more like you talk to someone frame one, you're like on the same page, you're vibing. If you need a card, someone's got your back. 9 times out of 10, they're like, don't even worry about it, dude. No other card game is like that. No other region is like that. Charlotte is top tier, and I'll die on that hill.
No, absolutely. Yeah. As someone who navigated from a couple of states away to this area, I 100% agree. I think this is a fantastic community.
Shout out Charlotte, dude. It's a good area. It's a great place to be in. It's great for playing the Pokemon TCG. Give us a regional again next year. This sucks that we don't have a regional this year. Bring it back. This is officially a TCPI call out post or TPCI call out post. We deserve a regional, bro. Bring it back. Like
at Play Pokemon.
Excited to go to Atlanta, but also give us Charlotte too. You're being stingy for no reason.
I wonder if it was a scheduling conflict. Well, no, it couldn't have been because the Charlotte Convention Center is vacant at the times that they would normally have done. I don't know.
Yes. No, it was probably had something to do with the new organizers this year being in-house and like their own thing.
Ah, that's right.
But that's a whole other can of worms that I don't want to get into.
You could have a whole episode just on that.
Dude, yeah, truly. Cool. Let's kind of call it there. Bryan, where can the folks at home find you, man? I'm gonna link your socials in the description alongside our Patreon. I never mentioned this. Patreon.com/Terminal Creative to get early access to every episode and bonus content. Yeah. Also, Bryan's links are down there too, and those are more important.
Yeah, most people can find me on Bluesky. I'm at megamasterx.neocities.org on Bluesky, which ironically is also my website where I put blog posts and what I'm into and things like that. And I just because I really don't like social media too much, but
understandable.
I got to keep tabs with people on Facebook Messenger, right? So yeah, I'm on the Charlotte Pokemon Discord. If you're curious about any of my brews, I always post my lists on the Pokemon Discord under the deck help channel. One, to have an archive of them all because there's a lot, but also to like get feedback. So if you want to take any of the brews back, like I said, after this coming Friday, as of the recording of this episode, I want to be clear, I will put the Veluza list up there if you want to like see what that's all about. My Palafin list is there too. But yeah, and definitely subscribe to the Patreon. Throw these guys some bucks. They deserve it. Thank y'all for putting this on.
Absolutely. Happy to have you on. This is some of the most fun conversation we've had on the podcast, to be fair. Like I loved this episode and you have been a gracious guest, and I honestly look forward to I'll probably have you back on at some time in the near future if possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or we will rather. Cool. With that said, sorry. It's late, man. I'm tired. With that said, this has been great. Everybody like, comment, sub, visit the Patreon again. It's the cost of a pack of cards. Sling that our way. It'll be great. And with all that said, we're gonna call it there, and we're gonna move on to the bonus episode. Have a great night, and peace out.
Good luck. Have fun.
Oh.